Start. Okay. Good evening, students. So today we'll be talking about the preparation strategy for surveying. Okay, right. So we are going to talk about how to prepare for surveying for both our GATE examinations as well as our engineering services examination. I'll also give you a few hints about how to prepare for State Service Commission, etc. Right. Now, one thing that I would like to make very clear is that surveying is part of our civil engineering paper code C. Okay, surveying is part of what? Civil engineering paper code C, civil engineering gate paper. Okay, but if you download the civil engineering gate paper, okay, right, you will not see the topic surveying there. They will write a new name that is known as geomatics engineering. Okay, rather than writing surveying, they write geomatics engineering. Okay, now why I am trying to clarify is because in our new examination criteria, there is a secondary paper also given to us. Okay, right, we can write two papers now in GATE examination, and in this particular paper we have first aerospace engineering as a secondary option for civil, paper code is AE, architecture engineering, that is AR paper code, followed by environmental engineering is the paper code of ES. You see, fourth one is geomatics engineering with the paper code of GE, and naval architecture and marine engineering with the paper code of NM. Right. So in our GATE paper, rather than writing surveying, they will write it as geomatics engineering. And there is a secondary paper called as geomatics engineering already in GATE. So there will be a slight confusion. Okay. But please understand, right, geomatics engineering, where geo stands for earth and matic stands for measurement, is a sort of a higher survey. When we talk about geomatics engineering, right, it is sort of the higher surveying that we have to discuss more. Okay, right. Now, if you look at the syllabus of GATE surveying, about 60 to around 65% of the syllabus will match with the geomatics engineering syllabus also. Now, this geomatics engineering is available for civil as secondary paper as well as for ESE as well as for computer science students, because this geomatics engineering contains surveying, contains little bit of signal processing, that is part of electronics and communication, and little bit portions are there that takes care of database management, which is part of a CSE topic known as DBMS. Okay, so therefore it is given to all the three core topics like civil, followed by ESE as well as our computer science. But about 60 to 65% is civil topics only. Out of that, only surveying is there part of the syllabus. Okay, so it's basically surveying related paper. And next paper that we have is environmental engineering, where most of the syllabus will match with our GATE environmental syllabus. So if you are going to select a secondary paper, it's very good that you select either environmental or geomatics engineering based upon your preferences. Okay, so do make that particular decision as soon as possible. Naval architecture and marine engineering is more closely related to mechanical, and the syllabus is slightly very vast. You may not have much idea about aerospace and architecture, so we don't really suggest these two as secondary. So better take geomatics or environmental science based upon your interest. So that I want to clarify first. We are only going to talk about surveying, which is part of the civil engineering paper code C. Right. So now let us talk about the test of abilities that GATE paper will generally test. Okay. You take any GATE paper, the GATE paper will test the following abilities of the students. Number one is recall. Number two is comprehension. Number three is application. And number four is very unique. It is known as analysis and synthesis. Okay. So what happens in recall? Recall means the ability of a student to memorize and reproduce the data. Yes. So can you recall this information, right? So like memory based questions will be what they will be asking in the recall format. This is especially for GATE. Okay. Next we have comprehension, where you need to read a few statements and you may have to take a decision on whether this particular statement is true or false. Next we have application oriented questions. So slightly conceptual oriented questions will be there, but mostly you need to read the questions and you need to basically apply the equations, and you need to know which equations needs to be applied, what conditions in these equations are valid, and likewise you need to apply. When it comes to analysis and synthesis, it's like more of a very high standard questions that we can get. So data will be given to you, rather informations will be given to you. They will not mention about what you need to do there. Okay, for example, when it comes to a recall type of question, or let us say an application level question, they can ask you like this. For example, a chain is standardized at, let us say, 20 degrees Celsius. If this particular chain is used in a field where the field temperature is 50 degrees Celsius, right, what is the correct length of the line? So it's very clear that you need to apply that temperature correction. But when it comes to analysis and synthesis types question, they may not tell you anything about what kind of corrections that you need to do, or what are the equations that you need to apply there. You need to read it properly, and then you should analyze that particular information. Based on that, you need to work out the plan in which you're going to find the required data. So such questions you can get a lot from our heavyweights of civil engineering, like environmental engineering, and followed by, let us say, our geotechnical engineering, transportation, etc. These are the heavyweights of civil engineering. So in that particular heavyweight topics, you can get some good rank deciding questions like this. Okay. What I want to say is mostly surveying will be concentrating on these three aspects, mostly on recall and comprehension, to an extent yes, application also. The point I'm trying to make is some very high difficult questions you will never get from surveying. You will never get from surveying, right? Especially in GATE examination, right? And I will again repeat this. GATE stands for Graduate Aptitude Test in Engineering. And if you have good aptitude, if you are very good in aptitude, you can solve most of the questions in surveying. If you have a doubt, you can just go to the previous year questions in GATE. Okay, you need to have a good aptitude. Obviously, you should know the subjects. The fundamental understanding of the subject is required. But most of the times, you can solve some very good questions just by using your aptitude. You may not even have to use a single equation also, right? Tomorrow, we'll be having our, some questions we'll try tomorrow. We have one more YouTube session on surveying where we'll see some good questions. So I'll try and explain that in the next YouTube live that we have. Yes. So remember, this is there for every topic. Surveying will be mostly revolving around 1 and 2, and to an extent application level you can get. Yes. Next, we'll talk about the syllabus of GATE Civil Engineering paper surveying. Okay, it's not geomatics engineering, but especially surveying. Okay. Yes. So if you look at this, so basically they are talking about the principles of surveying. Right? You might recall the principle of surveying, even if you have not studied, surveying as of now. You did not start your preparation. You'll know this because this is the first question your external will ask you in Viva. Right? Generally, everybody will ask you. Please tell me the principles of surveying. Okay. Right. Next up, errors and their adjustments. Now I will talk about this in detail. This errors is gaining a lot of popularity in GATE in the past 2-3 years. Okay, as well as in engineering services. Next, they are talking about maps, right? Followed by what are the scales of map. What are the coordinate system? Coordinate system means the different coordinates by which we will try and plot details in our paper. Surveying is basically measurement of the Earth's surface, but finally the objective of surveying is to prepare maps and plans. So how do you plot this? That is what coordinate system is. Okay, followed by distance and angle measurements. See, distance measurements means basically vertical distance and horizontal distance. Angle measurements means basically our horizontal angle and vertical angle. I'll come back to that point little later. Followed by leveling. Leveling deals with mostly measurements in the vertical plane. Trigonometric leveling, part of leveling only. This traversing and omitted measurements. Traversing and omitted measurements is a very important topic for us. Followed by triangulation also, right? Next, they have mentioned about total station, which is a very advanced instruments that we use in our surveying, right? This chain survey, compass survey, plane table, these are all replaced by total station except leveling, followed by horizontal and vertical curves. This curves topic is also very important for us. I'll tell you why it is important. Followed by photogrammetry, right? It's also a good topic for us in surveying. Now remote sensing is there, followed by scale and flying height. Photogrammetry and remote sensing, they have considered together because before remote sensing evolved, we had photogrammetry, and you can consider photogrammetry as one part of remote sensing, one passive form of remote sensing, where they are mostly asking you to find the scale of the photograph and flying height of the photograph, right? But there are more areas they investigate. We'll try and talk about that later. Followed by basics of remote sensing and GIS, right? Basics of remote sensing and GIS. Now here, you will not find 3 topics mentioned, but I will discuss about those also. Those 3 topics which are not really specifically mentioned are number 1, GPS, that is global positioning system. Now, if you look at, there was a recent change in GATE syllabus, 2 years back, there was a recent change in GATE syllabus. So the only difference that they made in surveying is they removed the name GPS from the syllabus. But please understand, GPS is part of remote sensing only. GPS is part of remote sensing. So don't come and say, sir, GPS is not mentioned in syllabus, so do we have to study that or not? The answer is yes, you have to study. Right. Followed by another topic that they have not mentioned here is theodolite. Another topic that they have not mentioned in the syllabus is theodolite. But please understand, you cannot do trigonometric leveling unless you have a fundamental understanding of theodolite. If you look at the last how many years of GATE paper that you want, there is no question from theodolite. Till now there is no question from theodolite except this year GATE 2023 paper. Okay. I will say that, I used to say that it's a less important topic for us, but if you are really unlucky, you may get a question. That's why we used to, discuss that particular topic, anyway in GATE. So this time in GATE 23, we had a question from this. Maybe in the next time also, you might get a question in GATE 2024. Right. Followed by another topic that is not mentioned as areas and volumes. Right. Areas and volumes is also one topic that is not mentioned in our GATE syllabus. But please understand, as far as you consider surveying, surveying has three objectives. Number one, to prepare the map and plan of the area. Number two, using that map and plan, calculate the area and volume. For example, you are going to build a railway line that is 100 km long. What is the volume of earthwork required? That volume calculation we need to do. What is the area of the catchment area of a river? Right? That is also done by using surveying principles only. So calculation of areas and volume is very fundamental objective of surveying. So we have to include that. It's not there in GATE, but it's definitely there in our ESE. Okay. And third objective of surveying is to set out. That is to fix the positions of points from the plan to the ground. That's not a set out. So these are the three objectives. Make maps, from the maps calculate areas and volumes, and find the positions of points on the ground. Yes. So these three are not really mentioned in GATE syllabus, but still, these are part of the syllabus. We have to discuss about them. Right? In ESE, the syllabus is almost the same, but extra one topic is there for ESE, that is field astronomy. Extra one more topic is there in ESE, that is field astronomy. Right. Now, field astronomy is a very interesting topic. I am 100% sure that you may not. If you analyze the previous year ESE question, every year in ESE there is one question from this particular topic. Guaranteed, one question is there in ESE prelims. Last year ESE mains, there was one mains question also, one theoretical question was also there. Yes. So studying this particular topic by yourself is very difficult. I'm not trying to discourage you. Right. The point that I'm trying to make is you need to have a formal introduction about what the field astronomy is, how the entire subject is framed. That fundamental understanding is required. Without that, if you try and open a textbook and study, it will be very difficult. Smoke will come out of your head. Okay. So if you have not attended any of our lectures, I suggest that you prepare field astronomy as soon as possible, because it might take some time for you. Okay, we'll cover this topic within 4.5 to 5 hours. Yes, but 1 or 2 questions are guaranteed from this in your engineering service. This is not there in GATE, so GATE people need not worry. They removed this from GATE syllabus. You might see one previous year GATE question in compass surveying, that is to calculate the time at a point, if the time at this point is some 10 hours, 20 minutes, 30 seconds. Like that, one problem you'll find, because this was part of our GATE syllabus, but it has removed. Now it is not there. Okay, it is only there for ESE. So for GATE and ESE, syllabus is the same. In ESE syllabus, they have mentioned GPS, they have mentioned theodolite, right, and they have mentioned areas and volumes. Apart from that, one extra topic is field astronomy. This is the syllabus. Now let us talk about the formal definition of surveying. This will help me a lot in the next coming slides. So look at this. It is nothing but the art and science of expressing relative positions of an object that is lying either just above the surface of the earth, just below the surface of the earth, or on the surface of the earth. So we are trying to find what relative position of a point that is either on the surface, just above the surface, or just below the surface. Okay. Now let us pay some attention to this term relative. Right. So what do you mean by relative? Relative means with respect to some fixed reference, we are trying to measure our point. Yes. If you recall the concept of surveying, the principle of surveying, the second principle of surveying, it slightly talks about the same thing only. Yes. So there is a fixed reference point. With respect to this, you try and find your position. These positions are relative positions. So how many such relative measurements do we need to take to fix a point in the Earth's surface? I'll say there are 4 basic measurements in surveying. They are, first one, horizontal distance in the horizontal plane, horizontal angle in the horizontal plane, followed by vertical distance in the vertical plane, followed by vertical angle in your vertical plane. So one distance in the horizontal plane, one angle in the horizontal plane, one distance in the vertical plane, one angle in the vertical plane. Okay, so this is what our syllabus is always about. This is what our syllabus is all about. Okay, right. With this understanding, let us talk about the relative importance of each and every chapter in surveying. We saw the syllabus, we'll try and understand the syllabus little bit in detail. So the first chapter in surveying is what are the basic concepts. First chapter is what are the basic concepts in surveying. So here we'll discuss all the fundamental requirement for surveying. Okay, from this there is a few areas in which GATE regularly ask questions. What are the particular areas? That particular area is you see the classification of surveying, right? Classification of surveying. Okay, so basically there are different classifications of surveying. What they will do is they will give you a definition, they'll give you 4 options, you need to identify which surveying is this. This is a regular pattern of question that GATE is asking. 2 years ago also GATE asked one question, right? ESE also asked questions around this. Yes, if you look at previous year ESE questions from this topic, this classification is one area that they will ask you a lot. Right, in how many manners it is classified, that is also important for ESE, but for GATE point of view, you just remember the definition. Be in a position to identify the survey, provided they give you the definitions. Okay, so that is one area in the basic concepts that they will ask a lot. Next, there are some concepts known as shrinkage concepts, shrinkage ratio concepts. Recently in our GATE examination, if I'm not wrong, in the past 2 years of GATE examination, there was one question in which they say that the map was shrunk like this. It was measured by using, the details were measured by using a chain that was also too short. So you see, chain surveying concepts are included with the shrinkage concepts of maps. So they try and combine this, okay, both in GATE as well as in ESE, right? So here we'll talk about the classification, the shrinkage ratio, and error due to wrong scale. This is also one wrong scale concept. If you are not using the correct scale, what will happen? Yes. Next, there are a few areas in basic concepts like verniers, from which GATE generally don't ask too many questions, but you can find some good questions in ESE. So that is about the basic concepts here. These are actually areas which are GATE have already asked, right? Next is our chain survey. So what is the first basic measurement? The first basic measurement is horizontal distance. That horizontal distance is measured by using our chain survey. In fact, the first experiment in your survey lab is also chain survey. So here, how to measure horizontal distance? This is what they are introducing. Here in chain surveying, you should know the basic principle of chain surveying. What is the working principle here, right? And based on that working principle, in the last 3-4 years in GATE, they have asked about well-conditioned triangle. Okay, what are the questions framed around this well-conditioned triangle? You please go and find out yourself. Okay, so chain surveying, right? The principle is where GATE have asked some questions. Okay, right? And tape corrections is one area from which they ask. Tape correction is one area from which they ask. And chain too long, too short. Too long, too short. Too long, too short. This concept is also regularly investigated by GATE. Okay. So principle, tape corrections you need to see, chain too long, too short. This is one area that you need to concentrate. This particular concepts can be combined with so many other things, so many other concepts of our basic concepts. So you need to have some good clarity here. So the horizontal distance measurement is done. Now we'll talk about the horizontal angle measurement that is done by using a compass. That is done by using compass. So that is our compass survey. In compass survey, the important questions that they ask is, right, mostly around local attraction. There are very, very good questions around local attraction that GATE have framed. Okay, if you go to 2015 and all, in that paper they've made a very good question about local attraction. Right, fundamentally very strong question they have asked. Yes, so local attraction is one area that we need to remember here. And if you look at your ESE, they have asked around the concept of declination. They have asked a lot of questions around declination, and you see in declination there is one particular concept where they give you details of the sun at noon. The magnetic bearing of the sun at noon is this and that, right? Then what is the declination at a place? See, that particular model of question was not really of a GATE standard. We found that questions multiple times in our PSUs. and in PSUs as in our ISRO, BARC, DRDO examination, where the level of question is a little bit less, and obviously State Service Commission examinations levels are also less compared to with GATE. But you know what happened in the last year GATE examination and before year, 23 GATE and 22 GATE, they asked the same question exactly copy pasted, Control C, Control V they have done, copy pasted the same question. Okay, right. So because maybe due to COVID effect, they tried to make the paper a little bit easy. We don't know. Yes. So this is one area from which GATE has asked very recently, and also comparison between the two campuses, a general comparison between the two campuses. So that is also one good area from which they will ask. Right. Now I'm not talking too much about the ESE mains part because that itself is a separate discussion. Okay. Now, when it comes to our compass survey, we will measure angles in whole circle bearing system, I hope you know, and reduced bearing system. Right. Now, in our State Service Commission examinations and to an extent in ESE prelims also, conversion between WCB and RB and all they will use to ask. If the reduced bearing of a line is like this, then what is the whole circle bearing of a line? In PSEs and in PSU level examinations they used to ask. See, that is a very basic question, very basic question, low substandard question I can say, as far as GATE is concerned. But this, in the recent GATE examination, that conversion between bearing also they have asked. They have asked something around azimuth. They have given reduced bearing, then they ask you to find out what is azimuth is. Right. So basically, you need to convert, the reduced bearing system to whole circle bearing system. That was the question. Okay. Without understanding that, you cannot solve any problems in this particular chapter. Okay. Yes. So that is our compass survey. Next, we have to talk about the only graphical method of surveying, that is nothing but plane table surveying. Only graphical method of survey, I'll call it as plane table surveying. So this plane table survey, they have not really asked too much questions in the recent past. Basically, the most important area here will be what are the methods? What are the methods of plane table surveying? Now, there are basically 4 methods. Like I hope you know, our radiation method followed by our intersection method followed by traversing followed by resection. Now, please understand, in GATE examination, how you do these methods are not important. What is important is when you do these methods. Field condition is more important than field procedure. What is the specific condition in which you go for intersection method? That is what you need to study. Because they will ask you questions like this. For points lying across a particular river, which is inaccessible for us, which method of plane table surveying is the best suited one? To add details to an already existing map, which method is more suitable for us? So based on the field condition, they will ask you questions. The same, if you look at in your engineering services mains, they will not ask you about, when do you go for this? They will ask you, how do you do this method? That's the difference. Okay, between mains examination and to an extent your prelims and GATE examination. So these methods are slightly important in our GATE, right? So resections and all are there. That is one area that you can concentrate. Yes. Next comes the most important topic in our GATE examination. We call it as leveling. So leveling is the most important chapter I would say, because if you look at the previous year GATE questions, around 65% of the questions are coming from this chapter. Okay, so I will also say like this, leveling is the most asked area in GATE examination. Leveling is the most asked area in GATE examination. There are so many fundamental concepts in leveling that they are asking. Based on the basic terminologies of GATE they are asking, leveling they are asking questions. For example, based on mean sea level they framed one question. Right. Next, based on the basic terminologies, backside, foresight, intermediate side, right, when do you take this backside, when do you take this foresight, questions have been framed. Right. And one very important area from which they have asked question is inverted staff. Okay. So inverted staff is a very easy concept, right? But the problem is they will frame the question in which the terminologies will lead to confusion. Understand? Basically, all questions in inverted staff you can solve by drawing 3 lines. Right. So this is where your aptitude will come. If you can draw 3 lines, then you can solve all questions from inverted staff. But where to draw which line, where to represent what data, that is where your fundamental understanding is required. So basic idea of this chapter is required to draw that particular figure. So I will say inverted staff is fully aptitude oriented question. It has nothing to do with surveying, I'll say. Okay. So inverted staff is an area from which they have framed a lot of questions. The basic terminology, from which they have asked some good questions. From reciprocal leveling, they have asked some good questions. Okay, right. Now, another one good question they are asking you is distance to the visible horizon. Okay, so if a person having a height of 1.8 meter is standing on the ship, right, then what is the distance up to which he can see at the horizon. Another one very good question that they are asking is, I am standing on the beach, my height is 1.5 meter, I can see the tip of a lighthouse that is 40 meters tall. What is the distance between me and the lighthouse? Like that questions are framed. So many times, repeated pattern they have asked. But interestingly, there are a few areas from which GATE have not really asked. Okay, GATE have not really asked. Now, why those areas are important, I'll discuss that later. Okay, so this is our leveling, which is very important chapter for us. So with that leveling, vertical distance measurement is over. Now we need to measure our vertical angles, which is measured by Theodolite. Right, so vertical angles are measured by Theodolite. In Theodolite, till now in GATE, up to GATE 22, there was no question. There was only one question came in GATE examination, that was based upon the vertical angle measurement. It was a numerical question. But in ESE, there are some good questions. From ESE, there are some good questions coming in this particular Theodolite chapter, mostly on the errors. Most questions are framed around errors. Right. For example, by reading vernier A, vernier B, by taking the average of these two verniers, which are the errors that are getting eliminated? Okay, which are the instrumental errors that are getting eliminated? Like these questions are framed. First question in this chapter came in this year. We do expect more questions from this in the upcoming years. Okay, right. So that is Theodolite. Now using Theodolite, we can do our trigonometric leveling. Okay, we can do our trigonometric or our indirect leveling. Now, from this also, there are some good GATE questions. Okay, so here basically there is again no surveying. There is no surveying in this. This year also, in this year GATE also, we had one question from Theodolite GATE 23. Sorry, from trigonometric leveling. So I will say there is no surveying involved. There is no surveying involved. The informations that they have given in the particular question, if you are able to put that in a figure, it's over. It's full trigonometry only. It's full mathematics only. If you know what is tan theta, you can solve the entire problem. Okay, yes, they can introduce surveying in this, that we have discussed detailedly in our class. We'll see some questions tomorrow also. So trigonometric leveling, yes, they do ask some good questions from this. Since there is not too much surveying, just a trigonometry is there, I believe you can easily solve it. Okay. Next is our very, very important chapter, I'll say, that is traversing and omitted measurement. Traversing and omitted measurement. This is a very important chapter for GATE. After leveling, I will give this the most highest weightage. After leveling, I'll give it most highest weightage. Recently also in GATE, in 23 also, if I'm not wrong, there was one question from this particular traversing and omitted measurement. It was a very good question. They were talking about a food delivery guy going this way, going that way, going this way. Then finally, what's the total distance that he have traveled from this origin? What direction is he looking? So it's a, to an extent, it is a analysis and synthesis type question. To an extent, analysis and synthesis type. Okay, so where they are asked mostly about the coordinates only. So very good question about traversing and omitted measurement. Okay, so very good question. For GATE, omitted measurement is only two-step solution. For GATE, omitted measurement is only two-step solution. But the same omitted measurements in ESE mains is a 25 marks question. Okay, right. So it's a very important topic for ESE also, right? Traversing and omitted measurement. Next chapter that I will discuss is our contours. Right, contours. These are also one important topic for us. Not specifically expressed in GATE examination, but they have asked some previous year questions in GATE. Not too many. I guess there is around 1 or 2 questions from contours. Yes, contours are very easy topic. And mostly, what you need to do is you need to know about the fundamental terminologies there. What is contour interval? What is meant by horizontal equivalent? Right, and what is meant by contour gradient, what is the relation between them, and finally, what are the properties of contours. Finally, about the properties of contours. Okay, there is much to discuss about trigonometric leveling, that's why I did not mention anything. Traversing and omitted measurement, every topic is important, that's why I have not mentioned anything. In this contour, these are the major topics that you should know: contour interval, horizontal equivalent, contour gradient, properties. If you look at your previous year ESE questions, lot of statement 1, statement 2 questions are framed around the properties. So there should be a good understanding about this. Okay, right. GATE, not too much questions have asked. They've asked one numerical question about finding the position of a particular reduced level in between two given reduced levels. Right, if A is having this elevation, B is having this elevation, where will be the position of this elevation in between A and B? Basic interpolation only is required. Yes. Next, we'll talk about the 10th chapter here. So the 10th chapter is nothing but areas and volumes. As I told you, it is not really mentioned in GATE examination, GATE syllabus, but fundamental understanding is required. Okay, you find volume calculations of reservoirs from contour maps that we will make only. So they are very closely related. In our ESE, there are some good questions. So basically, what we need to remember here is the approximate formulas. Okay, so the approximate formulas that you study in your mathematics, like Simpson's 1/3 rule, those are the things that they will generally ask, right? So that is the 10th question. Now 11th chapter I would say would be tachometry. Okay, so this is one area from which GATE has not asked any questions so far. This is one area from which GATE has not asked any questions so far. Not any interesting questions so far. There was in 1990s and all, there are one or two questions they have asked. But there is confusion in which the question is framed, so they did not repeat on that particular concept too much. So in tachometry, basic most important is the fixed stadia method, right? Most important would be the fixed stadia method. Fixed stadia method is the most important question. But you see, about a few years back, around 2 to 3 years back, there was a question from tachometry in a special method of tachometry, or in a third case of tachometry, that is known as the tangential method of tachometry. Okay, tangential method of tachometry. Okay, it's a non-stadia method we call it. Yes, there was a question here, but the question was framed based upon the concepts of tangential method. But if you draw the figure, it is nothing but leveling chapter. If you draw the figure with respect to the given data, you have little bit aptitude, you have the answer there by using the concepts of leveling. You don't even need the concepts of leveling. If you are able to draw a figure, you will get the answer. Right, so solution lies within that particular question itself if you are able to draw it. So most of the times people fail to draw the figure. Okay, so that's what where practice is very important. If you read it, you feel that you understand the question. If you look at me solving the question, you will see that it makes 100% logic. It's very easy to understand. But you don't understand nothing from that unless you practice yourself. Okay, so when I say you should draw figures, you should draw figures. Let it go wrong, no problem. It will go wrong first time. It will go wrong second time. It will go wrong third time, but from the fourth time, you will make it correct. You need to reach that particular extent. That's the important part here. Okay, yes. So that is about our tachometry, another important chapter. Yeah. Next, our very important chapter I will say is number 12 is curves. Okay, I'll say this is also one very important topic for us. Why? Because curves is a topic that is common in 3 subjects. That is surveying, followed by transportation engineering, followed by your railway engineering. So the concepts of curves are present in all the 3. Right. Now, there are certain differences here, but I'll suggest that you start curves in surveying first to have a fundamental understanding. Me as a surveyor, we are more interested in setting out the curve, but as a transportation engineer, you will be more interested in the design of the cross section of the curves. How to achieve super elevation? What are the different ways in which we can achieve super elevation? Where we go for this particular method of achieving super elevation? Those kind of details you need to do. Okay, so you are more interested in designing the cross section, achieving the super elevations, calculation of that super elevations, right? But we are more interested in setting it out. So questions will be framed around them. There are some good questions from this in curves, in GATE as well as in ESE. Okay, in GATE, I will say the most important will be nothing but the elements. The elements of the simple circular curve, like mid-ordinate, long chord. This mid-ordinate is what we call it as setback distance in your transportation. Most of the IRC formulas there are basically derived from the basic understanding of surveying terminology only. Yes, so curves is one area that you need to concentrate. Next comes one very, very interesting and very, very popular topic in GATE nowadays, that is the errors and adjustment. So errors and adjustment. Okay, so if you look at this, previously in ESE, it carries a good weightage. Regularly they ask questions from this area. But in GATE, they did not ask too many questions from this. But in the last 2 years, they are repeatedly asking questions from this particular errors and adjustment. Some good questions they are framing. Again, I'll say it has nothing to do with surveying. It's purely mathematics. If you understand the probability chapter, normal distribution curves, the assumptions involved there, some basic terminologies like standard deviation, you can solve this entire chapter. Obviously, you need to know how to differentiate also, because partial derivatives is what we'll use here. In this particular errors and adjustment, the most important question that they ask is propagation of errors. For example, I measured the radius of a circle. It is having this much amount of probable error. Using this radius, if I calculate area, what is the error in the probable error in the calculated area? So using this data, if I calculate a value, what is the probable error in that computed value? That is what the question that they will frame. Please understand there are two types of errors that we will deal with, probable error and absolute error. Absolute error is nothing but normal partial derivative. Okay, I don't have to teach you that even in surveying. It's just basic mathematics only. Delta change in one quantity, what will be the delta change in the function based on that quantity? That is how the questions will be framed. Some good questions are coming from this area. Please pay attention. Okay, we do expect questions from this area also in the coming GATE examination. Next chapters, I will just group them together. One very important chapter is photogrammetry. One very important chapter is photogrammetry. So this is also one important topic for us. Right, about 2 to 3 years back, there was one GATE question based on photogrammetry. Very beautiful question. I say this regularly in class. Okay, because why do I say it's very beautiful is because the equations that is needed to solve this particular question, you already know. We solve multiple questions on that. But what these parameters mean in a photograph, that you should know. Unless that is understood, you will not be able to solve it. They gave you a small diagram representing an aerial photograph. They mentioned a few details in that. What these details are, right, in that photograph, what it means, these parameters in a photograph, unless you know that, you cannot solve it. Equations are the same, but you see, you don't understand the physical meaning of what the terms are, you are unable to solve it. So that particular factor, GATE has investigated there. Very beautiful question, photogrammetry, okay? Right. In ESE, photogrammetry has some extra topics, like tilted photographs are there, parallax is also there. So there are some extra topics in ESE. For GATE, it is mentioned, syllabus is calculation of scale, calculation of flying height. But, you know, they are asking a lot of questions from relief displacement also. Okay, in the GATE, if you remember the syllabus I told you, they are only asking for scale and flying height calculation. But standard questions they framed from relief displacement also. Right. Next few topics are of less important for us. They are total station. I'll write like this. Followed by triangulation. Right. Followed by triangulation. Okay. And the remaining topics I'll write like this. That is GPS, GIS, and remote sensing. Okay, these topics, right, these 5 topics, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, please understand, these 5 topics combinedly will give you 1 mark in GATE. These 5 topics combinedly will give you 1 mark question in GATE. There was a previous year GATE question from total station based upon the accuracy of an EDMI. You know, there are few parameters, few standard deviations that we use to express the accuracy equations. Okay, based on that there was a question. There are no previous year questions from triangulation. Okay, and from GPS there was only one question. What is the minimum number of satellite connections that is required? Everybody knows the answer for that. From GIS till 2023 there was no question, but in 2022 and 2023 they asked one question. Up to 2021 GATE there was no question, but in 2022 they asked one question, and 23 also they asked one question. But the 23 question, GATE 23 question from GIS is not from GIS. I'll say it's again aptitude. I'll say there is again aptitude. So they said is, if I am scanning a document by using, let us say, raster format, and if I am having some, let us say, 30 dpi, pixel density, 30 dpi, dots per inch, that means in every inch there are 30 dots, or let us say 300 dots. I'm using that particular, scanning system to scan it, and if I scan it with, again, let us say, 100 dpi scanner, 100 dots per inch scanner, if these are the dimensions of my document I am scanning, what is the percentage reduction in the number of dots? Raster and all, these words and all, they have put in that particular question, but it is nothing but aptitude. It's nothing but aptitude. If you are strong in aptitude, you can solve it. Okay, right. Now from remote sensing also, right, they have asked a few questions basically about passive and active remote sensing. And in GATE 2017, there was one question regarding the Landsat series satellite that they use in America, in US, NASA uses Landsat. And in that particular Landsat series, they asked for one particular sensor and the number of bands it used for communication or collecting data. See, in the entire previous year questions of GATE, I will say that is the only one question that was difficult. I'm pretty sure that nobody might have got the answer correctly. In fact, they might even wonder from which subject that question is coming from. That kind of question that was. They did not mention much details about remote sensing in our GATE syllabus. Basic introduction is only what they are asking. That question was no introduction, okay. It was very specific, not even in India, in US NASA program that they asked. I will say that is the only one difficult previous year question from GATE. And it was a recall type question. It's a memory based question. You need to mug up the data to answer that question. So except that one single question, everything is very, very easy. Right. Now please remember, these 5 topics will guarantee give you 1 mark in GATE. Okay. You should not take more than 3.5 to 4 hours to go through these particular topics. Photogrammetry is very important. Errors and adjustment is very important. Curves is also very important for us. Next important topic is traversing and omitted measurement, right? And next important topic is leveling, right? And these 4 chapters, the fundamentals of these 4 chapters, will combinedly give you 1 mark. Okay. So these 4 chapters, first 4 chapters is going to give you 1 mark question, right? Leveling, right? Trigonometric leveling, I'll say. Errors and adjustment, okay? Traversing and omitted measurement, photogrammetry, to an extent curves, and trigonometric leveling. These 7 topics, very, very fundamentally simple topics, they can give you another 2 to 3 marks question. And the basics of the last 4 topics will give you 1 mark question. So that comes down to the weightage of surveying. Now, please observe very carefully. What did I mention? I tried to give you which are the areas from which GATE have asked questions so far. These are the tapped areas. But please remember, GATE nowadays concentrate on untapped area. If you please recollect, I told you from Theodolite till now there was no question, but recently they asked, untapped area they asked. From GIS up to 2022, there was no question. The last 2 years they asked, untapped areas. As I told you, in a declination, in compass surveying, they did not used to ask that particular simple question about magnetic bearing of sun. They used to come only in our State Service Commission examination. That they have asked. Okay, right. So please understand, GATE is now concentrating on the untapped areas, which makes our job a little bit easier. As a student who is preparing for GATE, you will definitely practice your previous year question 2 to 3 times. Yes or no? Yes. Now what you need to do is, you need to identify the untapped area. So take that particular chapter you are studying. For example, you are studying leveling. Take the previous year GATE question like booklet. You see what are the topics that from which they have already asked questions. Whatever remaining topics from which they have not framed, you please try and concentrate on them. Highlight them and study, and put extra effort on this during your 2nd and 3rd revisions. Okay, because you might get a question from that area. Okay, most of the percentage GATE questions are coming from this untapped area. So which means you are in a good position to predict from where the question is going to come. Sir, can I do the same thing for engineering services? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There is no specific interest for ESE in a specific a part of the syllabus. They'll ask you equally from all the topics. They will ask you equally from all the topics. Okay. So as a GATE aspirant, make sure that the untapped areas are also properly prepared by you. It's very important. Obviously, PYQs should be thorough, right? And you can see a lot of questions in your classroom practice questions that we have made, and also in our test series that we have made that are specifically from this untapped area. So make sure that you are practicing these particular questions also very well. Yes. So next, let us talk about the weightage of our topic. Okay. So let us see the breakdown of weightage of surveying. When it comes to GATE examination, it is carrying a weightage of around 4 to 6 marks. As I told you, the first 4 chapters will give you one basics of the first 4 chapters will give you around 1 question. The other important topics like leveling, omitted measurements, traversing, errors and adjustment will give you 2 to 3 marks. The basics of the last 4 chapters will give you around 1 question, maybe 1 or 2 questions. So that will add up to be around 4 to 6 marks. So for GATE, what is the weightage? Slightly less, around 4 to 6% weightage is only there. Right, but please understand, it is an insurance policy for us. If you look at the heavyweights of GATE examination, from which we are guaranteed to get more than 10 marks. If you take geotech, you'll get around 15 marks in that. It's not 100% guaranteed that even if you prepare the entire syllabus, you'll be able to answer all the questions, because that analysis and synthesis type questions, they will frame from this heavyweights in GATE examination. So if you're losing 2-3 marks there, okay, so this is the topic from which you should gain it. See, everybody knows that these are the heavyweights, everybody will prepare it. So that does not make any difference. If you are performing, too good there also, everybody else also performing there too good. But there are a few students who overlook these simple topics. That is where you need to be smart. Okay, you should know the heavyweights, and these are your insurance policy. If you just go through the heavyweights, the first 5 major topics in surveying, right? Definitely you will get around 65 plus marks. But that 65 plus marks does not guarantee that you will get into a PSU. Okay, so you need to push yourself more than 75 plus marks. For that, you need topics like this. And please understand, the difference between that first ranker and the 100th ranker, or the 100th ranker and the 200th ranker will be basically these simple topics only. Whether he prepared these topics and answered it. There is no doubt that the first ranker and the 200th ranker has prepared the heavyweights. They have. So if you want that extra edge over the other person, you need to have these small topics, in your pocket. Okay, yes. When it comes to our ESE, for prelims point of view, we get around 8 to 10 questions, right, in prelims, which is a good weightage. And when it comes to mains, we'll get around 45 to 60 marks. This is the general weightage in mains. So you see, there is a good weightage. And as an ESE aspirant, what I will suggest is, you please add a 10 to 20% of extra in every concept that we discuss. For example, I talk about, let us say, sensitivity of a spirit level. I discussed about some 10 points in that. As a student, as an ESE aspirant, you should go read the textbook and add 4 or 5 extra points more than what I've taught you. Not just add some, unnecessary theoretical points. Conceptually, if you see that, okay, this is where they can confuse us, highlight that point and read it. You make sticky notes you take and paste it in your short notes or in your classroom notes, type it, put it there and write the extra topics there, extra points there. Okay, this is 100% necessary as an ESE aspirant. Please remember, most questions from ESE, especially in surveying, will be theory oriented. So that theoretical advantage is required for you. You need to prepare. Okay, yes. Now when it comes to our state commission examinations, right, or our UPSC level ISRO BARC DRDO examinations, I'll say around 10 to 15% weightage is there, which is very good in surveying. Okay, and mostly they'll ask from the first 5 chapters only, right? And when it comes to our examinations like SSC and our Railway Recruitment Board examinations, especially in SSC, right, highest weightage will be there for surveying and topics like RCC. So very good weightage for SSC. It's going to come very very soon. You're going to get the SSCJ examination. You please make sure that you're going through surveying. And if you look at that, if you look at previous year questions, that will be more than enough, because so many times they are repeating questions. Set 1, set 2, set 3, set 4. You get a lot of repetitions in this. So please go through the previous year questions. High weightage is there for surveying in these examinations. Right. Next up, let us look down the reference books that you should have. As a GATE aspirant, I'll say don't read textbooks too much. If you have a very huge doubt that irritates you a lot, then you go and read that particular part. But before going and reading, you please ask us. If we are able to clear that doubt 100% for you, then don't go bother and read that particular textbook, because GATE is more about problem solving. It is less about theory. Okay. But if you are an ESE aspirant, you should have at least one of these textbooks as a hard copy. I personally don't read soft copies, so I don't advise that you also read soft copies. You keep a hard copy with you, highlight the points and read. Okay, so the standard books for us is BC Punmiya, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3 required for required for ESE. Okay, SK Duggal, Volume 1 and Volume 2. It's a very brief, very brief description of our informations, but BC Punmiya is an elaborate discussion of our informations. Another textbook that you can use is Part 1 and Part 2 of TP Kanetkar. Slightly difficult to get hard copies, right? Very easy to get hard copies and soft copies of these 2 textbooks. Okay. There are some good extra points in SK Duggal that are not really mentioned in surveying by BC Punmiya. So these 2 textbooks are some standard that you can keep. As an ESE aspirant, I'll say you go with either one of them. Okay, yes. So these are some reference books for you. Now, what are the things that you should do as a student who's preparing for competitive examination? Number 1, please understand the difference between the university and competitive answering, competitive exam answering. As a university examination or as a university examiner, I am looking about the point where the student is elaborating or not. So you need to elaborate more in university, but when it comes to competitive examination, nobody cares about your elaboration, right? So the person who's going to score better, perform better in competitive examination is the one who can reach the answer as soon as possible and obviously as correct as possible. Okay, that elaborate number of steps and all not required. You should develop the skill, you should cultivate that speed by which you can skip 2-3 steps and get to the answer as soon as possible. How does this come, sir? By practice only. You read that particular previous year question 5 times, you read that classroom practice question 5 times, like this, you'll know. But unless and until you put pen to the paper, you'll never get that speed. Even if you have solved it 2 times, there is no harm in solving in the 3rd time. 3rd time will be the fastest. Okay, so you need to build that speed. Okay, next, right, crisp understanding of the concept is very, very important. So you can go to the answer as soon as possible only if you are having a clear-cut idea about what the concept is. See, when it comes to, this is very important for ESE students also, because you see, when it comes to interviews, we know that they are top rankers that are sitting in front of us, but still they fail to answer even the simplest of questions, very crisply. Because they know what this is. They know numerically how to deal with this. But how to explain this in simple words, you tend to forget. So this is very important when it comes to your interview, the crisp understanding. Right. So if you're, if you need to have that understanding, you imagine that you are teaching a, 5th standard student. The concept you are trying to teach your 5th standard student. That kind of habit you need to have. That kind of ability you should cultivate. This is very useful when it comes to your interviews. Okay. Right. Next, familiarizing with PYQs. As I told you, it's ultimately very important. They tend to repeat a few areas. Like I told you in leveling, distance to visible horizon, inverted staff, they used to repeat a lot. So if you're lucky, you get a repetition of the same concept. But at the same time, you need to be giving due attention towards untapped areas. Once you know these are the areas from which they've already asked, you get to know which are the untapped areas that you need to concentrate also. Okay, this makes our preparation very, very comprehensive, very inclusive of all the different areas. Right. Next, make sure that you write summary notes. You summarize. Right, because you see, the moment you study one concept in a chapter, it is very easy for you to go through the other concepts because more or less they are interlinked. But once the chapter is over, can you follow that link between the concepts? This is very important. Okay, this you can achieve by writing your own summary notes. You take up the chapter, okay, this is what we studied, from this we went to this, from this we went to this, from this we went to this. Maybe the first concept and the second concept may not have a clear connection, but the first concept and the 4th concept will have a clear connection. The 4th concept, if you need to understand the remaining 2, 3 and all, you need to understand. So you try to interlink like this. It will be very useful for you. Right? It will help you consolidate. It will help you own that concept as yourself. Right. Next, what you need to do is look for elimination and back substitution approach. This is also very, very important. Okay. See, if you are familiar, GATE has recently introduced in the past few years multiple select questions. So what is the purpose of the multiple select questions? Please understand, it can be numerical or theoretical. When you look at a subject like surveying, where there is 50% theory and 50% numerical, these MSQs hold a very high value because so many areas they can touch from a single question. So many concepts that they can touch from a single question. Right. So here, this elimination approach and back substitution approach will help you a lot. In ESE also, we have the same pattern of question, but slightly differently. Consider the following statement 1, 2, 3, 4. Identify the correct statements. Identify the incorrect statements. Say more or less the same model of question. So how the elimination approach works is this. Right. Imagine you studied a concept. You studied almost 90% of that entire concept is 100% sure for you. But the 10%, from which you did not prepare, that is from which the question has framed. Right. First statement, you may not know whether it's true or false. Second statement, you may not know whether it is true or false. Third statement, that you know that is wrong. Okay. Fourth statement, you may not know whether it is true or false. Now, if they are asking you, identify the correct statement. You look at this. Third statement, you know it is not correct. So eliminate all the options in which third one is said is correct. You may get there is only one option left. That will be your answer. Okay, so there is loopholes like this. in GATE and ESE examination. So if you are at least 80 to 90% clear in one concept, one area of a particular concept, then elimination approach will help you a lot. Please understand, when it comes to GATE, solving quadratic equations and all, third degree equations and all may not be really possible. So there this back substitution works. If you can solve the question to that particular extent where by substituting the values of L1 and L2, let us say, let us say x and y, x1 and y1 from the options, if you're able to get the answers, you should go with back substitution. Okay, yes. So take the data from this question, try and put it in the equations you have framed, see if the LHS and RHS matches. That will be your solution. Okay, yes. Next, we'd like to discuss about the importance of short notes. It's very, very important, right? While first preparation itself, you need to make short notes. Now, when you come back to revision, you'll understand that most of the details in the short notes you have already understood, you have already memorized. Then you try and eliminate the less important informations from short notes and make it micro notes. Everybody will come with the general questions are how to make micro notes. You will know how to make micro notes only if you start making your short notes. So trust the process and start making your notes. Right? Because see, the way I make short notes will be different from the way you make short notes. The way I memorize things is completely different from the way you memorize it. So it's a very unique, person-oriented methodology. Right? But general concepts you can have, you can talk with your friends, develop it, and do try and make short notes and micro notes. Right. And also, during the first time that you are attending a lecture, please bring classroom note as well as a small set of papers to write formula. So the moment I write one formula in the board, you write it in your classroom note, together in the formula book also you write. So this makes your preparation very easy. Because there will be one day wherein which you don't feel like studying. Too much concentrated in your mind, you're too much saturated that you cannot study. It will happen to everybody. At that day, what do? Go sit in your bed, take this formula book and just go like this. Just don't read, don't write. Okay, just read. Familiarize. This is again an effective form of revision. Right. Next, investigate how data can be represented. This is very important in GATE. As I told you now, in the problem in photogrammetry, the equations that that is required to solve, it. We have solved so many problems on it. But unless and until you understand what this physically means on the photograph, you are not able to solve that previous year GATE questions. So investigate, right, what this particular data means. What is the different ways in which data can be represented. This is also very, very important for us. Okay, next, try giving test series after 1 to 2 revisions. This is also one common mistake that you make. Right, in the enthusiasm of finishing that particular subject or finishing that particular chapter, you jump and try and go a test series. You will get the best mark in that test series. But that means absolutely nothing. Because you just finished it, right? You're very fresh in your memory. You can easily give the answers for that. But that does not mean anything. See, the same questions, right, if you try after some 2, 3 or 4 revisions, then it will be making more sense to you. Because, right, you studied something. After a few days, you go for revision. After a few days, you go for second revision. Then only you try and attend. That will make more sense to you. Immediately after finishing a topic, if you try and go test series, does not tell you because you tend to forget data after 1 or 2 days. Then you go back and revise. Then you try and give. That will give you a much more better, understanding about where your position is. Immediately after giving is not really advisable. After, 2, 3 revisions you give. It will be much more effective for us. Okay. Yes. Next, always remember, fix one day in every week as a revision for you. From Monday to Saturday you study, Sunday you revise and you relax a little bit. Okay? Time is a little bit less for you, but please make sure, right, you do find some rest. It is required for you. And also, do keep at least 1 hour of exercise, preferably in the morning. Okay, the day you wake up, do some exercise. Or at least for a Sunday, you go outside and do an outdoor activity. Don't stay in your house or in your room all the time. It's not really advisable, right? We need to socialize to an extent, yes. So every day you do some amount of exercise to get that blood pumping. Preferably you can do that in the morning. And at least once in every week, you go out for a run. You go outside for a run. You go play some badminton. You try to interact. Okay, don't sit at home and do some online gaming and all. Don't do that. Go outside and play. It will give you a lot of resetting capability to your brain. Okay, right. And finally, do remember, right, practice is more important than preparation of the syllabus. You need to study, yes, You need to study why, because that is the first stone that you need to step. First step that you need to get into, then only you can go to the next step. But that next step is the important one. What is that next step? Practicing. So practice as in a many number of problems, right? That will put you at a better position than others. Okay. Preparation is required, but that is only 40%. Remaining 60% is how much you prepared, how much you practiced. Try and write as many number of test series, but do make sure that it is coming after some number of revisions, not immediately. Okay, and try and last 2 months of your gate, last month at least, January month should be completely used for writing full-length gate examinations. You can get a lot of new areas from which you did not prepare. Try and prepare that on the same day. Try and increase the coverage of your syllabus. By December, you should try and finish at least 1 or 2 revisions, and by January, you should be giving maximum number of test series. That will reinforce our preparation. That's it, guys. That's for today. Thanks a lot. I'll see you tomorrow with some interesting concepts. Thank you. Good night.